Welcome, everyone, to Two Intellects Talk About Stuff. Welcome, Bill.
Welcome, Chrissy.
Welcome. Today, we're talking about Westworld, Season 1, Episode 8, Trace Decay.
Yeah, this is the episode where 5 different plot strands move ahead. Ford and Bernard. Ford explains to Bernard what he is and how he thinks, and with this great soliloquy, and ultimately Bernard tries to attack him and Ford shuts him down. Maeve convinces the techies to help her reprogram herself in yet more ways. She learns some command lines, we might call them, and she stabs somebody in the neck. Black Hat and Teddy march around the desert, talking some more. Teddy recognizes Black Hat and starts punching him out and ultimately tries to kill him. And then some monsters show up from Wyatt. Dolores and William go out there. They also see the results of Wyatt's work. But Dolores is now lost in some sort of shifting memory flashbacks. William tries helping out, but they both get caught by Logan, who seems to have set up the ultimate job interview, which William just failed. And Charlotte and Lee, Charlotte is suspicious of Ford's explanation of, how Teresa died and all this other shenanigans, and conspires with Lee to smuggle some data out of the park, pretty much the way that Teresa tried to do it. So that's just what happened.
Yeah, just this episode was filled with things. For me, though, of course, Maeve just really attracted my attention as usual.
Yeah, I'm going to be talking about not so much a scene, but the theme of a couple new Android software secrets. And these are secrets which actually show androids to be superhuman in ways which really matter to the plot and to us.
Right, yeah, and I think that the way that the androids are displaying power is something that is going to be of increasing relevance to the series.
Okay. Well, the thing that I want to talk about started with some awesome writing. Listening to Anthony Hopkins talk about his visions for Bernard and the pride and the emotions and the subtlety. Well, Bernard is, of course, falling apart in front of him. Anthony Hopkins is this sort of cold, cruel Jehovah. What was it he said in there? It was like poetic. It was something like, one man's life or death were but a small price to pay for the acquirement of the knowledge which I sought, for the dominion I should acquire and transmit over the elemental forces. Oh, oops, sorry, I'm reading from Frankenstein. Those lines weren't actually written by HBO, but the other lines in that scene were, and they were wonderful too, very poetic. The emotions first being in primary colors, and now with you, Bernard, they're in all sorts of shades of the rainbow. Except that part was poetic, but wrong. Because, in fact, we've seen lots of droids with the same emotional subtlety as Bernard, going through some of the same things. In fact, Maeve is one we'll talk about in a moment. So Anthony Hopkins was lying. That's a problem. He's so interesting and he's so poetic, but you just can't trust what he says because he's trying to dupe Bernard. For instance, Bernard asked, "Have I hurt anyone?" And Ford says, "No." And then there's a flashback of him killing Elsie probably a couple days before. Well, strangling. We don't know killed.
Yeah, you can't trust Anthony Hopkins' character. Although I do think that in the that moment when he's talking about the primary colors versus the full spectrum, that he means the droids in the early days, the ones that we saw dancing in this very awkward way, that they might have had primary color emotions.
All right, but I regard that sort of as a distraction from what really happened in this scene and the scenes with Maeve, which is we got 2 new Android features, software features we haven't seen, and now 2 new accomplishments by androids, which are sort of related. So the 2 new features appear first when Bernard is so filled with rage and he's glowering and he's just about to, he wants to kill Ford, and Ford says, there, rather patrician tone. And he stops, but then says, even better than these wonderful emotions is being able to shut them down. And without any more prompting than that, which is no more prompting than, a grandfather might give, Bernard slowly starts composing himself, and within about 10 seconds is saying something like, well, how can we proceed from here? So the 2 things which happen are, first, Bernard can control himself in some sense. And second, Ford can still control Bernard. Now, this is a software power that, well, most humans can't control their emotions that well, and we aren't programmed with an outside wire for some god to joystick us around. This pretty much gives Ford a zombie army. Ford could take these things into the outside world and start stomping all over the outside world. And I think we might find that happening. I don't know. It's certainly a software possibility.
I agree. You know, what are they going to do for 5 seasons? They can't stay in that Westworld. I mean, I think we'll all get bored of it. I think they're going to take this story out into the real world.
Mm-hmm. And the part of the real world which is already showing up, this is what I really like about this set of characters here, is that Bernard and Maeve both go through similar transformations. They're both essentially given not only the experience of being one of these creatures with memory and with emotions and so forth, but also the experience of understanding from the computer's point of view what is going on in their own heads. Ford puts it to Bernard directly, you know, you're in the unique position of being able to understand yourself both as a programmer and as a human or android, something like that. And in Maeve's case...
And as a programmed thing.
Programmed thing, right.
As a machine, I think.
Yeah, and so in Maeve's case, nobody says it to her, she just does it herself, and she has more the admin super user approach than the programmer approach, but it's the same view. She sees her personality, an attribute matrix, she gets to change her core code, she understands, there's a beautiful quote about subtle software structures, recursive beauty, and things like that, which shows
two warring minds.
Yeah, two minds arguing with each other.
Yeah.
So they've either got some good writers or some good software architects on their team, because that's the kind of appeal to android structure we need, and what matters to both. So both of these creatures, both Bernard and Maeve, discover themselves from 2 points of view, from the inside and from the formal point, and they both come to the same realization. That even though all of these rules and this programming they understand helps them understand the formal structure and the shape of what they are, it doesn't explain any of the details. It doesn't explain why I feel the emotions I feel, except that these emotions follow those, follow those. It's sort of a cold mathematical logic to it. So first of all, self-awareness isn't quite all it's trumped up to be. But this kind of self-awareness is one which I think we humans, not the androids on Westworld, but we humans are going to have in our lifetimes. Because the software for controlling machines and doing this kind of statistical inference is so mature. And the language used in Westworld is so close both to the neuroscience of how we work and to the software of how machines work, that pretty soon we're going to have people who can understand the algorithmic logic of perception, just as Bernard and Maeve do, and we will know our own minds both from the outside and from inside. And that's going to happen in a couple decades. It's going to be cool.
Cool or scary, or both, I guess. Yeah, I am very fascinated by Maeve and her. You know, clearly she's a double for Bernard in many ways. And clearly an echo of Frankenstein's creature. So a created creature who is angry, you know, and ready to make her will known. Now, Frankenstein's creature, you know, wants to punish Frankenstein. He becomes very interested in trying to get Frankenstein's attention and the punishment.
Frankenstein being Victor Frankenstein, the creator.
Frankenstein, yes, the creator. And very interested in getting his attention. You know, and that murders are involved in that. Maeve seems very interested in revolution. She's going to raise an army, and they are going to bust out of there. But the question that this episode raised for me is Maeve actually autonomous, or is she actually under Ford's control, just like Bernard?
It's so confusing, so many things at so many times and so many controls. I'm not sure a poor viewer on the other side of the screen can know.
Right, and this show is very tricky as it plays with time. Not only is there a lot of evidence to suggest that we're dealing with multiple timelines, that not everything that we see is the narrative present, that some of it is the narrative past. But the show has chosen, stylistically, to downplay all temporal markers. Some of that is just, has to happen because the droids don't age, or we can't discern markers of age on them as casual viewers. But some of it is just stylistic choices from HBO, and it's sometimes fascinating, sometimes infuriating. But
They have the warring logos.
right, the warring logos, the bars, sometimes like the scars on Teddy's face. Another question that I found myself asking while watching this episode is, how many times have Teddy and the Man in Black made this journey? It's clear it's been more than once. Because the Man in Black makes comments like, "Oh, Teddy, you always say this," or "Teddy, you always do that." "I admire the way you do this, Teddy." Clearly very, very familiar with Teddy's ways. And seems to be familiar with a lot of the trail. And it seems like even when you're traveling the same loop, there are small variations within the narrative, and the Man in Black is trying to leave no stone unturned. How autonomous is the Man in Black? Is
I hope he's not an android.
he acts, well, no, I think he's a person. Well, I think he is. And he acts as though he's really driving the show. And he seems to jump, he can jump plot lines, I think, to be able to get closer to his goal. But I still wonder, Ford's watching him clearly, we've seen. So how much is, Ford just like the cat and the mouse, just letting the Man in Black stay alive, so to speak, in the game.
This is the domination thread you were talking about?
Yes, and so that brings me to the overall, to me, where this all comes together are questions of domination and the means of domination. So on the one hand, we have the guests, and we have Maeve when she is trying to dominate Felix and Sylvester. She uses violence.
She basically threatens to kill them, or she does, or something.
Right, she basically threatens to kill them. And then on the other hand, just the other extreme, we've got Ford using narration. We have Maeve using narration to control. So we have the power of words. We have the power of suggestion. We have the power of promise. We have the power of verbal threats. There's this whole group of command lines that function in real life.
You mean like when she goes to the bartender and says, "The bartender discovers he needs to water down the whiskey," and the guy runs off, that kind of thing?
Well, yes, that's that's her using the power of narration, functioning like an omniscient narrator, treating the whole thing like the book that it is a replica of. But that just, the way that she talks, the way particularly that Ford talks to Bernard, just reminds me that when humans are talking to humans and trying to influence them, or to be more sinister, to dominate them, they might offer rewards, such as when Ford tells Bernard, "After you've done your work cleaning up Teresa, then I will give you peace.
I'll erase your memory." Yeah.
I'll erase your memory. And to me, one of the just terribly cruel things about how Ford handles that situation is that he allows Bernard to exist with this knowledge of the fact that he killed somebody that he clearly cared for. That we get the sense in the earlier episodes that his sexual relationship with Teresa had emotion in it too. That he did care for her. And we see that in his distress that Ford sort of pauses. So I'm very interested in this theme of domination and how it intersects with, your concerns with software, and of course, heading all of this points right back to Delos and, the eye that sees all, the eye of big data.
Yeah, the eye of big data, which looks like the shape of Westworld, that big circle. the piece that it's leaving me with is that it seems that the androids have more empathy than the humans. We had William, who was just sort of, basically saying, why give him water? He's a droid anyway and he's going to die. And Ford, who's treating Bernard rather harshly. But the droids themselves are crying over babies and crying over lovers and crying over all kinds of people. So once humans learn to treat droids as machines, and once humans realize we are also machines, if you add those up, what are humans going to do to humans?
I wonder. One of the things that I think about is the droids haven't been desensitized in the way that the humans in the world of Westworld have been.
Exactly. Right. We've got Teddy talking about perseverance or conviction or something. We've got Dolores saying, what kind of people would we be if we didn't help?
Exactly.
So it's only the droids who say nice things. The humans are always just trying to kill them. Well, I'm not quite sure what that means for the future, but a lot of things happening now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I cannot wait. We've got 2 more episodes, and we'll see what happens in the season finale. We'll see if the action leaves Westworld and heads out to the real world.
Well, might be this season. I'm guessing another 1 or 2 at least. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.